So I thought it'd be fun to share for anybody out there who's thinking about getting into arm wrestling what my first experience was like going to a tournament and competing for the first time. To give you an idea of how much experience I had trained with a man who is a professional arm wrestler about 3 or 4 times around a year ago, and then I had trained with a couple of other guys who compete about 3 or 4 times, and outside of that, all my training has been by myself or grabbing people in a gym who look strong and just asking them to pull with me to try to get better at handling myself and just feeling what it's like to get my arm leaned on more and more. So that was my limited experience before going to compete. All I knew is I really wanted to do it, and I knew personally I had a lot of strength in holding things in towards my chest, which is where a lot of arm wrestling strength comes in. So I worked on things like pronating my wrist, I worked on cupping, I worked on general bodybuilding and strength, and I also worked on rising. So training those things got me to where I was really good, and I could beat most anybody that I came across who didn't competitively arm wrestle, and I could beat a lot of the people that I came across who were the best arm wrestler among their buddies. And so I went into the tournament with a mild amount of confidence. I would jokingly say to everybody around me, I'm probably going to get humbled and I'm going to realize how much I'm lacking in arm wrestling. And so I went to the tournament, I filled out my paperwork, everybody was super friendly there. I met some of the best arm wrestlers in the world, and those guys are a lot bigger when you actually see them face to face than they look in their videos. It was really neat to see them. They were all super friendly. Everyone there was eager to share advice and grip up with me before the tournament even started, just to try to give me a little bit of help. I was honest, I told them this is my first time. I'm strong, but I really don't know what I'm doing because I haven't competed in a tournament setting before. And so once I got to the table, everything was great. I had a wonderful time talking to people, and even going to the table, it was great standing around the other arm wrestlers. Nobody that I encountered was a bad sportsman. Everybody was super friendly and just ready to get at it. So the game really does begin the moment that you get up to the table. Even choosing what side of the table you're on makes a big difference. It can make a difference on if you strap up on the buckle being on your hand or on the other person's hand, the ref being able to see how straight your wrist is versus the other person's wrist. And they do put refs on both sides, but there's a head ref and then there's the spotting ref. And they'll move your hands around as you go, and so from the very beginning there's a lot that goes into it, and people shared that with me when I got to the table, but it was really hard to apply it in the moment. With it being my first time, I was chock full of adrenaline, and it just was all so fast. And in my first match, I lost almost every match I was in, but I did manage to win one against a really good opponent. And the difference between me doing really well in a match and me doing really poorly came down to mostly I'd say 2 factors. One was I actually didn't understand this particular point of arm wrestling, and that's containing a person's hand. Because I have a lot of pronation strength and I have a lot of cupping strength, but what I was not prepared was containing the person's hand within mine, because in most events in arm wrestling, when you're in a classroom, people want to get your hand down. They're not really playing the sport of arm wrestling, they're just engaging with you in some shenanigans that's not professional, but it's fun. And so people would I think that they recognized my absence of being aware of what I needed to do there, and so they would blast through my fingers, and it would just put my hand in a bad position, and also probably my lack of experience also just put me in a position of where I didn't really grasp what was happening clearly, and the takeoff would happen, and I'd find myself here, and because I'm shorter and most of the people I competed against had longer forearms, I really didn't know how to get around into the proper grip to bring it back. I did notice that when I would get a hold of people, I did feel like I was stronger in certain motions because of the exercises I've done my whole life, but the actual sport of arm wrestling I was definitely lacking at. On the match that I did manage to win, the difference is I was far more picky about how I set up my hand on the other person's. I fought for a better position from the very beginning because people will fight to get your hand better in theirs than yours is going to be around their hand. And when I fought for it, I did win. And also in that match, I was mentally aware more so of what was happening. And so when I went into that match, I was just more prepared. My form was better. The guy that I locked up with didn't do anything that went to my weakest area. It went into one of my stronger areas, and I was able to lock him in, and I was able to pronate through his hand. And when I took him, I was able to rise a little bit, and his wrist popped out, and I was able to bring him closer into me and press him down. So that was fun. A lot of people said that it was really good for a first tournament. A lot of times at first tournament people don't get a single win. Even if I hadn't gotten a single win, I still had a lot of fun, and I still learned a lot. And if you're thinking about going to one of these tournaments, you really should. Of course, you should train ahead of time, try to build up some strength in your tendons and in your shoulders and your biceps and your forearms, in the pronation of your hand and in the supination of your hand. Anything you can do to get yourself more ready is a good idea. Now, honestly, it was the biggest learning experience I've had so far in arm wrestling. I know now where I need to focus on, and I know where I'm strong. I'm stronger than average in, but I need to become stronger if I really want to be competitive. So from here, it's going to be training my hand and just being able to clamp down harder on other people's, and really focusing on where I take off from in arm wrestling. Because when you take off in arm wrestling, because I've been training on non-arm wrestling tables, I could have my elbow closer to me, but I'm short. I'm not very tall. And so that means my elbow, if I want to have a more vertical hand position, I'm going to have to get my elbow further away from my body. And that's something I have to be aware of. And that was one of the big problems, was when I was going with people, I wanted my elbow to be in, but I put my arm in this position more so when I should have put my elbow further out so I could have it here, because it's easier to pull a lot in this way than it is to try to do that. That is all bicep and forearm, and this is mostly lat. The pain I felt the next day, because I felt like I've covered the tournament well enough, amazing, super fun, everybody was nice, a lot of lifelong pros willing to give me more advice than I could even put in, and it really was just a lot of fun, but overwhelming, and that really led to probably some of the things that led me to losing most of my matches. But to go on to the next day, and the days following, is the day that evening after the tournament, I didn't start feeling any pain until right around the time I was going to bed, and I did get pain in tendons around my bicep, on my right arm. On my left arm, it was mostly pain in the forearm. I did get some pains here and there. My wrists themselves, in the bones, I didn't feel much pain, but in the tendons, I did feel some pain. I had arm wrestled with somebody 3 days before the tournament, which is a bad idea, but I didn't know about the tournament until 2 days before. And so I could try to say, well, I would have won more matches if I wouldn't have trained that close to it and if I hadn't arm wrestled that close to it. But there's people that show up to those tournaments who arm wrestled the day before, and so I'm not going to try to pad my ego by saying I would have won, but I would have taken a longer amount of time if I could have. So the pain wasn't too bad. The biggest fear I had was getting my hand too far out like this. I never really got in a position where I felt like I was going to get injured. Could be just good luck, probably had a lot to do with it. Also, I think strengthening myself in those positions and in those movements, and really working with other people and letting other people press on my arm in the gym, even though they weren't arm wrestlers, I think helped me just get to where I can more comfortably have my hand taken down without being injured. It's been just a couple days. It was on Saturday, and today is Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember. But I mean, everything's starting to feel good. The pain's going away. Just I'm back to training again, and now it's just getting ready for the next tournament. It was a lot of fun. If you're thinking about doing it, you really should do it. I would recommend if you've got a lot of body fat on you, and if you're close to 220 pounds, you should really try to drop yourself under that so you don't have to compete at a higher weight class. Even if you're 190 pounds and you're kind of soft, drop down, because then you can arm wrestle guys who are going to be within a lower body weight. Lower body weight means less strength that you have to overcome, most likely. So, in my opinion, it was a lot of fun. I'm going to do it again. I think that anybody out there should go do it. If you want to see my one win, you can go onto the Total Arm Wrestling League Facebook page and go to the amateur division at 36 minutes, and you can see my one win. I wanted to find that just because it's fun to see what I did right. And if you want to sift through there, I'm sure you can find my losses too. But yeah, I think if you're scared of going because you're afraid of not winning, I don't think that should hold you back, because anytime you want to get better at something, you really should be willing to lose to get better. If you're only going to do something you can win at from the very beginning, you don't get better at most things in life. So if you're afraid of injury, train up, get ready, have people take your arm down so you can protect yourself, build up, strengthen your tendons and in your muscles as much as you can. But the biggest thing is get out there and just start. And I think that anybody that's out there who thinks that they're strong should try arm wrestling, because the only thing it's going to do is help you get stronger. Train, be careful, and don't let your ego run away with you. And look for somebody who knows how to arm wrestle to give you the finer tips of protecting yourself. But there's a lot of videos on YouTube. Go check them out. Totally worth it to go do. And those are just my thoughts following my first arm wrestling tournament.